What if I tell you that after watching this video, you will be able to write such large Azure Resource Manager templates to create resources on the Azure platform? Hi, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 11 of Azure Zero to Hero series. And in this video, we will explore Azure Resource Manager and Azure Resource Manager templates. We will use some examples and learn how to write those examples. I'll show you how to write them to create resources such as storage account or virtual machine or any other resources. Not just that. From the interview point of view, we will also try to compare Azure Resource Manager templates with other options to create resources such as Bicep or Azure CLI or Terraform. So that during your interviews, you will be able to answer when should someone choose Azure Resource Manager templates or when should someone use Azure CLI, Bicep or Terraform. So please watch this video till the end. Before we get started with the concepts, let me quickly tell you that this is the GitHub repository that we are maintaining throughout this series. Today is day 11. If you want notes for day 11, you can simply go to this folder and you will have the things that we are going to do in today's video. Let's say if you click on this, you will find the JSON files, the README files. So everything will be available in day-wise folders in this repository. You can start the repository so that you get continuous updates of any changes that I make to the documentation. Let's move to the whiteboard and start understanding what exactly is this Azure Resource Manager and why we use Azure Resource Manager templates. So Azure Resource Manager, ARM, is the one that is responsible for creating resources with Microsoft Azure. What does that mean? I'll make it very simple. As a user, as of today, there are multiple services that Microsoft Azure provides to create resources with Azure. For example, user can use the Azure user interface or portal, this one, or users can use the CLI, which we have learned in the last class, or users can use ARM, Azure Resource Manager templates, which we are learning in today's video, or users can use other services such as Bicep or SDK. So if a user wants to create a virtual machine today, users can choose between any of these services. But the thing is, user might use UI portal, CLI, template, Bicep or SDK. All of these services talk to Azure Resource Manager. And this Azure Resource Manager is responsible for creating resources with Microsoft Azure. If user creates or wants to create a virtual machine with the Azure portal through Azure portal, so Microsoft Azure portal provides some mandatory fields. User provides these mandatory fields, and the Microsoft Azure portal takes these requests and forwards that to the Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. Similarly, if user is using Bicep, so user is expected to write the Bicep templates or the Bicep DSL, and the request is taken by the Bicep and forwarded to Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. You might be using any of these services. They go to the Microsoft Azure Resource Manager, and finally, this Microsoft Azure Resource Manager creates resources on the Azure platform. So ARM, Azure Resource Manager, has some APIs, and all these services talk to the APIs. But your primary question has to be why? Like when there are multiple services that are available, instead of creating this layer, now Microsoft Azure has created the layer. But by eliminating this layer, Microsoft Azure can allow these services or the teams that are developing these services directly create resources with Microsoft Azure. Why should they create this layer? If this is your question, answer to it is standardization. Again, what does that mean? Very simple. So if user decides to create virtual machine, let's assume that this resource manager does not exist. Okay, for a while, assume this does not exist. Then if a user wants to create a virtual machine, and you know, if this particular team says, that is the portal or the UI team says, okay, so for virtual machine, the name that you want to provide, we have a validation or we have a condition that the name has to be between 1 and 6 characters. Now I'm just making up this example. You can consider this as virtual machine name or storage account name, whatever it is. So if this particular team says the name has to be between 1 and 6 characters, and then this team says, no, in our case, the CLI team says, in our case, we accept name between 1 and 10 characters. And then Bicep team, let's say if they say, okay, through us, if you want to create a virtual machine, the name, we are not opinionated. It can be 1 character, it can be 100 characters, we don't mind. And if SDK team says, in our case, the name has to be between 10 and 15 characters, then it's a bad user experience, right? It's a very bad user experience, because if I am a user of Microsoft Azure, then, I don't mind the input that these people take or these services take. UI might take the inputs through the user interface. ARM templates might take the inputs through JSON. Bicep might take the inputs through the domain specific language. SDK might take the inputs programmatically. But as a user, what I want is, if there is a particular field, there has to be a standardization. So this standardization or this user experience is maintained through the Azure Resource Manager. So this is the one that acts as a layer, and it makes sure that all of them have a similar user experience and the entire thing is standardized. So if this team has a different one, this team has a different validation, this team has a different validation, then it will create problems. So all of these things are taken care by Azure Resource Manager. These teams can develop their own services in the way they want. Azure Resource Manager, the Azure user interface might ask users to provide the inputs through UI. ARM templates might ask users to provide inputs through JSON. In future, there can be a new Microsoft Azure service as well. And it might say, okay, provide inputs in Python. I'm just giving an example. It doesn't matter for Azure. It just talks to Azure Resource Manager, and this one maintains a standardization, right? So this is why Azure Resource Manager exists. There are other advantages as well, but this is the primary advantage of Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. Now, your question can be, okay, this is Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. Now, what exactly is ARM templates? Which is our primary topic for today. So what is Azure Resource Manager templates? You can simply understand it as another way, or it is just another service that Microsoft Azure provides. How Microsoft Azure provides, or the team provides, a CLI service or a UI service through the portal. Similarly, Microsoft Azure templates provides a JSON form or a JSON templating standard, and using this JSON templates, users can create resources with the Microsoft Azure. So if there is a user, so user writes ARM templates, which are written in the JSON notation, and this is submitted to Microsoft Azure Resource Manager, and this Microsoft Azure Resource Manager creates resources with Azure. So this is the entire process, and we will learn today how to write these JSON files or how to write this ARM templates. And towards the end, we will compare these different services also. Like Abhishek, you're talking about different services, like there is UI, there is ARM templates, there is Bicep. You said there is SDK. There is also popular option like Terraform. So as a user, which one should I go with? As a DevOps engineer, which one should I learn? So we will understand this towards the end of this video. Now let's try to understand how to write this ARM templates. You said this is in JSON, but I don't know how to write JSON. Don't worry. That is what we are going to do today. If you look at these templates, they might look very scary, right? So if I'm talking about the virtual machine creation, so I already have the JSON, but I will show you how to write it. Don't worry. So if you look at this, this might look very scary because there are like 170 lines. And probably if you want to create storage account, initially this might look scary to you because there is some 25 lines and I don't know how to write this JSON. And I don't know what are the fields that are available here. There is something called schema, parameters, functions, resources. What are all these things? So let's start in a very simple way. Firstly, we will use something called as Visual Studio Code to write these templates. If you don't have Visual Studio Code, just search for Visual Studio Code download, and you can download Microsoft Visual Studio Code depending upon your operating system and distribution. It's very simple, very straightforward. Just search for Visual Studio Code download and you will get it. But after that, once you have this Microsoft Visual Studio Code, just go to this section called extensions. And you will search for a plugin called Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. Make sure that you select the one that has this blue tick with Microsoft, and the downloads, you will find a lot of downloads. Like I think there are 1.2 million downloads. So pick up this option and click on the install button. Right now I have already installed, so I see install as an option. In your case, you will in my case it is uninstall. In your case, you will find it as install. So click on this button and install Microsoft Azure Resource Manager ARM tools. And why did I ask you to download this? So what we are going to do is we are going to write a template at this point of time to create a storage account. Now I'm not taking you to the documentation, I'm not explaining you through the documentation, because if you look at the documentation, you might find it very overwhelming. But by using this technique, you will be able to write the Microsoft Azure Resource Manager templates within minutes. So once you download that extension, okay, let me create a folder to explain you people. Let me call it as dummy. Okay. And in this folder, let me start writing a simple ARM template to create storage account. Okay. So because this has to be in JSON notation, I'll call it as storage-account JSON. You should definitely provide the extension as .json only. And once you install this particular extension, you need to wait for the Microsoft Azure Resource Manager to load the schema. So technically, once you install the extension, just wait for a couple of minutes and then search for ARM. And when you just type ARM on this particular page or in the JSON file, you will find different options, right? Pick up the first one, which says resource group template. Click on this particular button and you will get the complete thing that is required to write your first Azure Resource Manager template. Now I'll explain in detail what exactly each of these field is. What is a schema? What is a content version? What is parameter, functions, variables, resources, and outputs? If you understand these things, then technically you understood how to write Azure Resource Manager templates and how does the Azure Resource Manager template works as well. So I'll be explaining each of these fields. But now what is our goal at this point of time? I just want to show you how to write the first Azure Resource Manager template, and that resource is going to be a storage account. Let's write a simple storage account creation. So go to this particular field called resources because I want to create a resource. Click on the enter button here. And when you install this particular extension for the first time, you will see that ARM schema loading. So let that process complete. If you hover on any of these things, like I'm doing it here, if I hover on resources, I'm getting the definition, or I have this comment which says resources collection of resources to be deployed. And if I hover on this, I will get the comment which explains this entire thing, or the description which explains what is content version. So to get this, you will have to wait once the extension is installed, and once you type ARM, just wait for a couple of minutes. You will also see a pop-up towards the end of your screen. And once this hover is available for you, so now just come here and just write ARM hyphen storage, because I want to create a storage account. If I want to create a virtual machine, I'll write ARM hyphen VM. Right? In my case, I want storage account at this point. So I'll just write ARM storage and click on this button. Right? So now the extension that you have installed has provided the complete thing that is required to create Microsoft Azure storage account. See, inside the resource, it said that name is storage account 1. Type is basically the one that Microsoft Azure Resource Manager understands. So this field is required for Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. API version again is required for Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. Then these are the tags for your storage account. Location, that is in which location you want to create. So it is reading it from the resource group. I'll tell you how it is reading. Then kind is storage v2. Again, this is required for Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. SKU, what kind of storage account you want to create. Is it premium LRS? Is it standard? Is it basic? Now, all that I have to do is just come here and change the name of the storage account. Because storage accounts have to be unique. Let me pick something like Abhishek.Veeramalla. Let me call it as 9986. Now I'm just trying to get a unique storage account name. And because we are using tag, let's also place it here. Otherwise, you can also remove tags because it is not mandatory to have a tag, right? So when you create resources through the user interface first time, you will learn all of these things. That's why I keep on telling you, whenever you start learning any cloud provider, start creating resources through the user interface, at least for the first time. Because if you don't create resources through the user interface, let's say someone has followed our day 9, where I've explained how to create storage account, right? There I have shown, if you want to create storage account, click on the create button. And there are these fields called resource group, storage account name, storage account region, performance. This is the SKU option that you see, premium. The same fields are available, but in the JSON format. So this is the standardization that Azure Resource Manager is creating. And if you understand how to create the user resources through the user interface, then technically you understand what are the fields that are required. And same fields are also taken in the Azure Resource Manager templates or Bicep or any tool that you want to use to create resources on the Microsoft Azure. Now I've changed this name and my template, I assume, is ready. Let's validate. And I'll show you that at this point of time, if I go to storage accounts, I don't have any storage accounts and I'm going to create it in front of you. Now the next step is, okay, Abhishek, I wrote this template. Now how do I deploy this template, or how do I submit this template so that Microsoft Azure Resource Manager receives this template and creates the storage account? So for that, the thing that you have to do is use Microsoft Azure CLI, which you have learned in the last class. Of course, you can take this and submit through the UI as well. But as a DevOps engineer, we would like to do things through the terminals as much as possible. So what I am going to do is I will take this JSON here in Visual Studio. You can just click on terminal, click on new terminal, and you will get this option. Here, if you already have installed Microsoft Azure CLI, which we have learned in last class, then you can also verify by typing AZ version. Okay, in my case, Microsoft Azure is available. Because I have done it multiple times, I know the command to deploy the Azure Resource Manager template. But if you are a beginner, you can just search for Azure Resource Manager templates, click on the first link that you would see, and search for tutorials or quick starts, and go for the beginner JSON template, create first template. And from here, you can get the command Of course, I've also copy pasted the command in the day 11 folder. If you go here, and there are two folders, storage account and virtual machine. We are going to create both of them. Click on the storage account, and this is the one 02deploy.md, and this is the JSON file that we are writing. So if you go here, there is already command. So first thing that you have to do is create resource group, and second thing that you have to do is create storage account by deploying the template. So firstly, let's copy this one and create the resource group for our storage account creation. And we will use the same resource group for virtual machine creation. And when you practice, try to create a same resource group. Eventually, once you understand Azure Resource Manager templates, you can delete that particular resource group. So I'm saying AZ group create hyphen name VS code hyphen location central US. You can change this particular location to anything. Click on this, then okay, our resource group is created. Now our resource group is called as VS code. Now the next thing that you have to do is create a storage account. For this, again, let me copy this. Go back. AZ deployment group create. Resource group is VS code. So till here the command is common. Just change the template file. Okay. So in my case, the template file is storage account hyphen JSON, right? But it is in the dummy folder. Right now, if you look at my present working directory, so I am in the Azure 0 to hero. So let me move to the folder called dummy. And here there is the storage account dot JSON. In your case, probably it can be in a different location. Maybe you might have to go to day 11, and within day 11, there is this storage folder, right? 01 hyphen storage. Probably you will have to go into this and execute the command. But in my case, because I'm just showing you the demo, so I'll move to the cd dummy, this folder, and here I have the storage account.json. So let me go back to the command. I'm using the up arrow to go back to the commands. And where is it? Okay, one simple way is just type Control R and just go to the storage. Yep, this is a command. So I'll just modify this one. Template file is storage hyphen account dot JSON. Now when I execute this, this will get created. Okay, it says resource group VS code could not be found. Okay, maybe the resource group is not created. Okay, let me try it one more time. AZ group create hyphen name. Let me call it as VS code hyphen location. Let's call it as central US. I think there is some issue with the gaps and the spacing. So I just, oh, perfect. Now it got created. I think there should be some issue with the gaps. Oh, okay. So there are, you see here, I'll fix this in the GitHub repository. Don't worry, there are additional gaps which is creating this problem. So now my resource group is created. So let's go back and try to deploy our template one more time. That is the JSON file. So AZ deploy group create hyphen storage account name hyphen. Let's also see if there is some issue here. So what I will do is I'll simply remove these ones because this is not a very big command. So I can also put this in a single liner. So I'll also fix this in the documentation. Don't worry. And let's remove this. So now everything is in a single line, and I'm also in the correct location where this JSON file is available in the dummy folder. So let's see if the storage account gets created now. And the resource group I have provided as VS code. So looks everything is good. Let's wait for starting. running. Go back to our Microsoft Azure, and here, if I refresh, I should see VS Code, and within VS Code, I should start seeing the resources getting created if there is no issue. Okay, it's still running. So the Azure Resource Manager template is getting deployed. And then once, let's also refresh and try to see. Okay, let's give it some time for the deployment to complete. So now it says that the deployment is complete. Let's go back and see in the resource manager. Perfect, I have my storage account. So I've created my first resource using the Azure Resource Manager templates. Now let's try to understand what are these fields, because I've created this using the extension. But during your interviews, if someone asks you to explain how to write an Azure Resource Manager template, so you need to know these fields in detail. So let's try to understand them. And they are literally very easy to understand. So let's start with the schema. So schema is basically the one that is validating what you have written in this particular template. So if you just take this URL and get it in your browser, this is another JSON or the schema, which is validating the things that you have written in this template. Why? Let's say if I provide, this is the resource called storage account, right? So the kind here is a storage account. And let's say if I provide more number of things here, immediately you see the validation failing, because you all know storage account can be created with minimum of 3 characters and maximum of 24. So you have exceeded that particular limit. So there has to be some validation to the template that you are writing. You cannot just write anything here, right? So that's why there needs to be a schema, and this is quite popular when someone defines their own JSON. So they also write a schema. Similarly, Azure Resource Manager templates team has also built this schema. And if you want to understand more about this schema, how it is written, and what kind of validations are being performed in this particular schema, so you can just go to this and you can understand, right? So this is about schema. Then content version explains basically the version of it. Tomorrow, if they come up with a new version, so they would increase the version, append the version, so that there is a clear difference. Just like version controlling. Parameters. So I'll give you a best example for the parameters. So if any one of you is aware of Jenkins, or let's say as a user, if we take the same storage account as an example, okay. So here, if you look at this particular template, I have hard coded in this template the SKU, the tier of the storage account that this template creates is hard coded to premium. But what if I want to allow the user or another DevOps engineer? Now, let's say this is a template that I have written for a particular team called XYZ. Okay, so the DevOps engineer has written this template for creation of storage account, and this request was asked by XYZ team. So tomorrow, a new team comes and they will also ask you for a template. But what they will say is, let's say this is ABC team, and they will tell you that, okay, we need a storage account, but it shouldn't be of premium. No, the storage account should be a standard one. Now, what you will need to do is you will need to create another template for this particular team, because you have hard coded the things here. So to avoid that, what you can do is you can use the concept called as parameters. And within this parameter, just like how the Microsoft Azure UI supports, like today, if I just go to the storage accounts, and if I try to create a new storage account, you will see that there is a default option. So the default is set to standard. and you can change this between standard and premium, right? So by default, if you just click on create, review and create, I did not change anything here. The default option is standard, but as a user, when I want to create, I can switch between standard and premium if I select this or select this. Similarly, even in the templates that you are writing, instead of hard coding things like this, what you can do is you can use something called as parameters. And within the parameter, you can say that, okay, the default value has to be standard, but user can pick between the values that is standard or premium. Abhishek, how do I do that? Again, do I need to learn how to write this in JSON? Like you have written some JSON here. I don't know this one, but how do I write this? Very simple. Just go to this option called parameters, right? Click enter and just type new parameter. I just typed new and I got this new parameter. Just click on this and provide the name of the parameter. Let's say I want to call it as storage account. Let me call it as tire, storage account tire. Okay. And this should be of type string, obviously. And I don't want to change anything in the metadata. This is just for people to understand what is this parameter. Let's just call it as tire of storage account. And basically here you can define, just type default value, comma, type allowed colon. Allowed values has to be an array or list, whatever you would like to call it, because we are trying to allow more than one value, right? Just like I showed you here. So just I need to place a comma here, and in the default value, let me place premium, and in the allowed values, what I can simply do is I can say premium, and here I can say standard. So there are two options that are available. Don't worry about these names and syntaxes at this point of time, but I want to show you how the parameters are used. Now, this is the parameter that I've created. All that I have to do is just copy this one, standard account here, and just come to this particular field where I want to remove this, replace the tire, and just put a bracket and write parameters within the normal brackets. Just paste the one that you have copied. Now, what happened is, instead of hard coding the tire, we have replaced that with this particular field, and it was very easy to write, right? If you don't know the JSON, it's still fine. If you have very little idea of JSON, that will work. If you don't have, you can learn JSON through this as well, because the extension is working so beautiful that you can just learn JSON by reading this particular thing or by understanding how the syntax is written. Very, very simple. Otherwise, let's say you don't even have that basic knowledge of JSON. What you can also do is just go back to these tutorials, and there are so many options that are available. Like, this is the example. We are creating a storage account, right? So here they have create first template or add parameters. Just go here and you will get the same example that I was talking about. If you just scroll down, see here they are already explaining you how to define this parameter and how to place the parameter. And you will get the same example if you search through this documentation. You can get the, just go to template specs reference, right? Within the reference, just go to template reference, and here you can search for the examples. Like I want to create storage account. Just scroll down and go to the storage account example. You should have it somewhere here. Storage, perfect. Just go to the storage accounts, and you will get the examples as well. Click on ARM template, and here you go. Now you have the complete example of storage account with all the fields. You can pick up the ones that you need. right? So instead of explaining you through the documentation, I wanted to explain through Visual Studio Code because this is very, very simple. So what you will do is just go to my repository here and start with, if you go to day 11 folder, you will find files for storage account creation. You will find files for virtual machine creation. Start with these things, and then you can explore the advanced options. Like I showed you, you can then explore with writing the parameters. Okay, let's move to the next field. So this is about parameters. Now the next one is, let's come back to functions. Next one is variables. Variables, just like the concept in every programming language, if you want to use a particular field multiple times in this JSON, then you can create a variable. For example, you might want to repeat the description multiple times, or you might want to use the same name for your storage account, for your virtual machine, multiple things that you're creating in this particular template. Then you can use the variables. Again, you don't need to know how to write this entire thing. Just click here and type new variable. Just say the variable name as resource name and paste the thing here. Let me call it as Abhishek demo resource, right? Or let me remove this hyphens. And instead of hard coding, again, you can replace it. Like you want to use the same resource name for storage. And after this, let's say you want to create virtual machine for everything. So you can just come here in the name section. You can just replace this with resource name. Of course, you should not be directly replacing. You should just write variables here, write this variables, and within this, you should be writing something like this called resource name. Perfect. So now this will be replaced. That is, the one that you have will be replaced with the variable name. So you can try to create this same template one more time. And now you will see another storage account created with the name that you have provided here. You can just try it one more time. All that you need to do is just execute the template one more time with the example that I've shown you and use this variable. You will get one more. Then replace the variable. You will see one more that is created. Perfect. So that was about variables. Then what do we have next? We have resources. So resources is the actual field. Like here, the resource that we are using is to create the storage account. Now let's say I want to create one more resource. So I can just type comma, and here let me search for ARM hyphen virtual machine. The entire virtual machine thing is provided. Or let's say I want to create ARM hyphen, let's say I want to create a app function. Okay, or yeah, let's go with whatever that we see here. Let's say app gateway. Okay, so now the ARM template for the app gateway is also provided. So resource is basically the one that describes whatever you want to create on the Azure platform. I've explained you during the first class also. All that you see here are the services, and what you create through these services are called as resources. So here we are creating a storage account resource. So that's why in the Visual Studio resources block, we wrote this particular thing. Finally, we have outputs. So outputs is what you want to see as an output. Okay, so basically when you execute this one here, so we got this JSON as an output. But if you want to customize your output and if you want to see a specific thing, just like in Terraform, we have outputs. Similarly, you can define your own output. You can define what you want to see and you can execute that as part of output. Let's say you are creating a virtual machine. Your output can be the public IP address of your virtual machine that you want to get. Any particular thing that you want to get, you can use this output section. Finally, moving to functions. So if you want to write a logic in this template, function becomes little advanced. So just understand it as, because we are just starting with Azure Resource Manager templates. For now, just understand that if you want to customize any logic in this, let's say instead of even using a variable for the storage account name, what I want to do is I want to generate this runtime. Okay, let's say I want to create storage account name and append with the timestamp. So I can use a concatenation function and I can generate a dynamic storage account name. So the use case of the functions is that when you want to write a logic in this JSON and you want to return the output, then you can use the functions block. We will learn them as we move forward because today is the first class. If we learn the functions at this point of time, that will be very confusing because some people also don't know how to write JSONs. So let's restrict our understanding to what exactly this functions does. So functions is used when you want to customize or when you want to generate a dynamic output, such as you want to generate a dynamic storage account name, or when you are creating virtual machine, every time when user executes this template, let's say once they get Abhishek, next time they get the virtual machine name as Abhishek1, Abhishek2, Abhishek3. So such things you can use the function, because if I hard code the name here as Abhishek, every time someone executes this template, the storage account name or the virtual machine name will be Abhishek only. Whereas if you customize and if you get this output through a function where you can write a concatenation function or when you can write a loop, there you can modify the name of the virtual machine or the storage account that is created through this resource. So this is for the storage account. Just try to execute it. Similarly, I have one for the virtual machine also. So you might be thinking that Abhishek storage account was very simple, but virtual machine is a complicated one. Doesn't matter. It's very, very simple because again, if I go to my dummy folder and create a new file here, okay, just let me go to this dummy folder and create a new file just to show you people. Let me call it as create-vm.json. In your case, you will not find this dummy folder in the GitHub repository, but you will find a folder called day11 where I have created and accurately put these JSON files. You can use them. So storage create vm.json. Again, just go here, type arm-vm. What happened? Let me just type. Yeah, let's type arm. Sorry, and you get this entire fields, and then go to resources, and here just type for arm-vm. Here you get different virtual machines. Which one you want to create? Let's say I want to create Ubuntu. Let's go to this. And that's it. Your 169 or 170 lines of virtual machine Azure resource template is created. Now you don't have to do anything except for modifying these fields. Of course, you know, these are some hard coded ones, right? So the template that is generated for you, it comes with a storage account. This is the storage account one. Then it comes with a public IP. Then a NSG is created for you, right? Everything that happens through the UI, same thing should be, like I told you, the behavior should be standard. Whether you are creating through the UI, whether you are creating through the ARM templates, Terraform, everywhere there has to be a standardization, right? So because everything goes to Azure Resource Manager. Then you have a virtual network. You have to create all this when you want to create a virtual machine, right? As we saw in day 7 or day 8, we have created all of these things. Network interface. Then you have, this is the VM that you want to create. And here just modify the name of the virtual machine because, you know, randomly they are using Ubuntu VM1. Let me call this as Abhishek Demo VM. I'm going to create it in front of you people. Right now, if you go back to my resource group, right? Let me show you. This is my resource group. And within the resource group, I just have the storage account, nothing. So I've modified the name to Abhishek Demo VM and admin username, admin password name. So these are the default ones. Let's change this to Azure user and let's change the password to Azure user @123. And one more thing, you know, because I'm doing it with experience, I know, like at this point of time, if I just try to create this template will fail. I'll show you. Let it fail and let us try to fix it. Okay. So again, if I use the same command, if you go back to my GitHub repository, virtual machine, deploy virtual machine. So let's copy paste this. And because there was some issue, so let me remove this as well. And better to remove this because if there are any Windows users, that might not work. So resource group, I'll keep it as VS Code, and template, let me modify it to create VM-JSON, right? In your case, you don't have to modify this. Make sure you are in the right folder and you are picking up the right JSON file. Just to show you people, I've created this dummy folder. Okay. In your case, you have to go to day 11 folder and you have to go to 01 create VM.json and put that. Okay. Let me create this and show you. It will fail because see, it failed because it said storage account already taken. You all know that storage account name has to be unique. So where is the storage account name? I think you can also see the line number somewhere. Okay. Anyways, so the storage account name where it is, yeah, this one. So Ubuntu VM1 storage is hard coded. So we have to keep the storage account name unique. So let's try to keep it as Abhishek. Mhm. Let's call it as Abhishek.Veeramalla 0101. Let me try my luck. It doesn't have to be that you have to create a new storage account, but we are just learning. So that's why, we are using a default template, but you can use an existing storage account, doesn't matter. But at this point of time, let's use that. Now you have multiple examples to play with. What happened? For the usage, template violation, please use ARM syntax. Okay. So Ubuntu VM1 storage. Okay, it says the virtual machine is referencing this particular thing that we have replaced, Ubuntu VM1 storage, right? I've just replaced the storage account name. But if you look at this, the virtual machine that we are creating in this template, that is Abhishek demo VM, is still referencing that storage account. So we need to change it here as well, right? Abhishek.Veeramalla 0101. I think now it will work. Let me see. Okay, so what did I change typically is that, all of these resources, if you look at the order, first a storage account is getting created, then a public IP is getting created, then the NSG, virtual network. Now, why are all of these things are getting created? Because the virtual machine resource that we want to create is dependent on all of these things, right? We are not just creating virtual machine, but we are creating virtual machine with all of these things. So I have modified the storage account name, but the virtual machine that I wanted to create, there I did not modify the storage account that it is referencing. So that's why I have to modify it in two places. So if you write this entire thing by yourself, by looking at the documentation, then it becomes too overwhelming. Uh, Firstly, some people might not have knowledge on JSON. And second thing is you will get demotivated by looking at such huge syntax. So that's why I tried not to talk about documentation as much as possible. Once you write this basic templates, then you can go back to the documentation, right? So now if you go back to the documentation, and as I've shown you, if you try to look at these things, let's say I want to create MySQL in future. Okay, so then I can go to this flexible servers in MySQL, click on ARM templates. Now if I even try to read this, now I'll start understanding them. These ARM templates or Terraform, it's not the game of one single day. You will take experience, or you will take time to write them in a better way. Right now, I've shown you some basic templates, which will be helpful if someone is asking in the interviews. You will be able to answer what are the different fields that are available in ARM templates, and you will be capable of writing some resource creation through the ARM templates. With experience, you will master it. So now I think if anyone asks you in the interview, you will be able to simply say that, okay, to write an ARM template, you need to have some you need to provide some basic fields such as schema, content version, parameters, functions, variables, resources, and outputs. Of course, you can also mention that I use an extension in Visual Studio Code, which is called as ARM tools. Using that, I write ARM templates in a better way. And then they might ask you some questions like, okay, what is difference between variables and parameters? Then you should be able to explain them. Variables is used instead of repeating the same field multiple times. Better example is the one that I've shown you here. Here when I modified this field 2 times. Instead, I could have written this in a variable, right? So I can modify this template and I can say here, here I can simply mention as resource name, and in the value, I can provide the same thing that I've written, Abhishek.Veeramalla 0101. And here I can replace this thing with the variable. Like I have hard coded it here. So instead, I can simply remove this entire thing and just say variables. And I can just use the resource name. And same thing I can use here also. So in future, if someone wants to change the storage account from 0101 to 0202, 0303, all that they need to do is just modify in one place instead of modifying it in 2 places, 3 places, or 10 places. Whereas parameters, it is used for a complete different purpose. I've shown you when you want to allow more values, we use parameters and provide a default value if they don't use that particular field. Perfect. So now looks like my virtual machine is created. Let me refresh this page and see. See, my virtual machine along with all the resources such as NSG, public IP, everything is created. Now, once you do this, your job, once you practice, please go back and delete the resource group. Sometimes I miss this particular thing because I get carried away and I forget to tell you people that delete the resource group, whatever you are creating. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Once you are practicing and learning things, just try to delete this entire thing. Because if you are in the pay as you go model, you will be charged. So try to definitely delete the resources that you have created. Now this is about Azure Resource Manager templates. You will get better by practicing. For today, just try to create the 2 resources. I've also shared the code, but just try to do it by yourself. But if you are still finding it difficult, just go to day 11 folder in the GitHub repository. If you just go to the day 11 folder, you have storage account code that I've written and virtual machine code. Both of them I have written live in the class today. But still, if you're finding it difficult, you can go copy paste these examples. Finally, let's talk about the differences. That is, okay. So let's talk about the Azure Resource Manager templates. Now, some people ask me to keep the video short. Some people ask me to, no problem. There is no issue with the length of the video. So sometimes again, I get confused. Should I stop the video here? Should I continue this in the next class? But okay. So the difference between Azure Resource Manager templates, there is something called Bicep and Azure CLI, also Terraform. There are other options, but these are the popular ones. Okay, let's try to understand the difference between these things. Abhishek, when should I go with this? When should I go with this? When should I go this? When should I go with this? As a DevOps engineer, of course, it is difficult to learn all of them. And I will not even recommend to learn all of them, right? So you should start with one thing, then start learning the other things. Right now, I know all of these things because firstly, I started with one of these things, then I learned other one, then I learned other one. I did not start learning all of them together, right? So Abhishek, if I have to pick one, then what should I pick? The options that I would give you is if your organization is based on Azure, okay, then either start with Azure Resource Manager templates, or there is a universal thing that is quite popular, that is Terraform. Someone might say that Abhishek, but Bicep is the one that is replacing Azure Resource Manager templates. So why are you recommending ARM templates? Because even Microsoft documentation is recommending to use Bicep. The thing is that Microsoft is recommending Bicep, but Bicep is introduced, I think, in 2020 towards the end of the year, or let's say 2021 towards the beginning, and it started becoming stable in 2022. So there are organizations which have been using Microsoft Azure for years, and their ARM templates are still not completely migrated to Bicep. This is from my experience, what I've seen. Still, a lot of organizations are using ARM templates, and there is a high chance that during interviews, you will be either asked on ARM templates or Terraform. If the job description has Terraform, then they'll definitely ask you on Terraform. But if the organization is completely on Azure, then there is a good chance they will ask you ARM templates over Bicep. Learn Bicep only once you complete, like at least get a basic understanding of ARM templates. For at least what I've explained in today's video, you should be in a stage to explain the basic JSON format of ARM templates. And if you feel that you still have time and you still want to learn something new, then probably go with Bicep, because Bicep started getting stable in 2022, and still a lot of companies are using ARM templates. So maybe if you ask me the same question after a couple of years, then I would be recommending Bicep. But at this point of time, ARM templates is far better and most commonly used. Then Terraform is a global option if your organization is on hybrid cloud, or you are coming from a different organization where you have past experience with AWS or something. So if you say Terraform, then there's a good chance that interviewers might get convinced and start asking you questions on Terraform. So ARM templates or Terraform. ARM templates if your organization or the job description strictly has ARM templates, or the company that you are applying for strictly is on Azure, or your company is strictly on Azure, then go with ARM templates. Global option is Terraform. Abhishek, what about CLI? So CLI is something that is, I wouldn't say that you need to learn CLI, right? Because in the last class also, as I've shown you, CLI is just like for the quick actions that we want to perform. I created a resource group using CLI, or I've deployed the ARM templates using CLI. It should become part of your Microsoft Azure working culture, where if I want to do any quick actions, I could have gone to the portal and also deployed the ARM template. But I want to do it quick, and I want to use the terminal, because DevOps engineers frequently use the terminal. So CLI is not that something you have to learn or something. Like, as you keep getting involved with Microsoft Azure or with the DevOps teams, then you will use a lot of CLI as your practice, just like kubectl, right? There's nothing like you have to learn kubectl. As part of your Kubernetes experience, you will start learning kubectl. Similarly, I take the AWS CLI or Azure CLI in the same way. Just as part of learning AWS, you will start using AWS CLI. Just as you keep learning Azure, you'll start using Azure CLI, just like Kubernetes with kubectl. So this is my suggestion. Again, I would like to tell, I wouldn't recommend Bicep for someone to start at this point of time. Even if you write the Bicep is actually written in DSL, that is domain specific language. So even if you write the Bicep DSL, it gets converted to Azure Resource Manager ARM templates, and finally it goes to creation of resources, right? So ARM templates are not going to die anyway, but Bicep will need more time. This is my thinking. And for interviews point of view, definitely people will be asking you questions on ARM templates. That is at this point of time, at the point of making this video, February 2024. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I request you all to perform the demo. I have shown you how to do it, and I've also put the GitHub repository. So you are just one step away. I've done all the heavy lifting. You just have to do one step, understand the video, and deploy the resources. I hope you will do it, and let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much. See you all in the next one. Take care.